Right, we are back. It is the Trading Triangle, so you know it is time to get the charts in action. Take a look at things for the upcoming trading week. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the live stream on YouTube and the live stream on X. Sean, how are you doing today?
Doing really well. I'm really looking forward to this week ahead. Lots going on. And I'm sure we'll dissect it in this live stream.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kay, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking, Nate. It's going to be an exciting week coming up.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of action. And of course, I'm your host, Nate. We are going to get into the charts. Before we do, quick disclaimer up front. Remember, this is not financial advice, purely entertainment and educational value only. We're just three guys that enjoy trading. We're not financial advisors. So I want to put that out there as a disclaimer first and foremost. But we do appreciate everybody tuning in, subscribing to the channel. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button. And appreciate everybody again tuning in on X, where we live stream on Wolf Financial and on my account as well at Trader Nate here. So good stuff, guys. I am ready to get rolling. Should we jump into it?
Let's do this.
All right, let's do it. Let's take a look at some charts. First up, our market overview from last week, and a lot of green here. Even I can tell that. What jumped off the page for you, Kay?
Tesla.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah.
That's it.
That's the one, huh?
That's the one. That's the one.
Well, that was not green. Definitely not. That was rough. And earnings definitely, they paid the price after the earnings call. What about you? Thinking about the same thing, Sean? I know we've got Tesla in our charts this week.
Yes, we do indeed. But for me, it was actually Google that jumped off the chase because of my active trade in it. So that was nice to see. But yeah, Tesla's obviously the main one you can see on this page. Very, very red.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I agree with you. Google was definitely interesting. Berkshire, look at Berkshire out there making new highs. So I thought that was pretty interesting to pay attention to. So we got a big week of earnings coming up. We'll definitely get into all of that. Let's take a look at the fear and greed index first, though. Got the put to call ratio at 0.75 and our VIX with a 13 handle, basically 13 and a quarter. And kind of mixed. I was surprised to see these numbers for last week, Kay, with SPY up 0.5%, but Q's basically flat. Small caps, up 0.5%. That was good to see. And now we are firmly in extreme greed. What are your thoughts there?
It's that's how earning seasons are generally, right? Especially when you had a decent earning from Netflix, right? I mean, they did a pretty good job in increasing subscribers. Of course, Tesla was a surprise, but I guess analysts were expecting, and we kind of expect this kind of a drop in Tesla, or either a gap up or a gap down. This is pretty normal for Tesla. It's such a volatile stock in that respect. But I guess the big ones are coming up next week, which we'll touch upon a little bit later. But I think this is the time that you gotta be more cautious, especially when it's extreme greed.
Sean, you feeling the same way?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely cautious. I've got a little bit of a thing on my live stream on Friday where I was thinking maybe we come down and retest certain levels. So there's a little bit of trepidation in the markets, that's for sure. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, still good. Still feeling pretty good generally, I think.
So interesting. I think I was the only one of the three of us that for the year thought that, overall markets might pull back a little bit and was less bullish. And as the year progresses, I know we're like, basically 1 month in, but I'm getting more bullish for the year. That said, I think that we'll get into the charts here and we'll see it a little bit more detail. But I think that we might be ready for a bit of a pause, another pullback. At least that's what the charts are telling me. So we'll take a look at that. And the extreme greed, that's where we would be when we would get that pullback. That makes sense to me. So we might be right there, and big earnings week will definitely push us one way or another. So look at that. I mean, we could spend an hour on this chart alone, I think.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
So our big name last week was Tesla, and this week you could argue what the big name is. I mean, we kick off with SoFi on Monday. Obviously not the biggest name of the week, but a lot of attention there, and so we got charts on that, or a chart on that. We got the big names: Microsoft, Meta.
We got Alphabet, AMD. GM is not a big name, but still, a lot of folks track that. Boeing, with the latest controversy with Boeing.
I think Boeing's super interesting, actually.
Yeah, exactly. You have Qualcomm on Wednesday, And then the three big ones, Apple, Amazon, Meta. I mean, they just dwarf pretty much. I mean, between Microsoft, Alphabet, Apple, Amazon, Meta, they pretty much dwarf the entire week. And then you have ExxonMobil and Chevron at the end.
And Sean, you mentioned you're going to be watching Alphabet, aka Google.
Yeah, no, like you said, there's so many to watch. It's going to be a very interesting week. Alphabet, yeah, just to see the continuation of the growth of the company. But yeah, same for everyone, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and there's gonna be a ton of attention on all these tech names, and we got big energy names. You got Marathon on Tuesday before Friday. You get Exxon and Chevron, right? And energy is a sector that's bounced off of its lows and trying to make a move higher. And oils held, in that 70, 75 ranges. I think was around the lows and moving higher. I think it's price of oil continues to push towards 80. So you definitely have an interesting setup ahead of earnings for the energy sector, and that's like totally lost in the mix here because of these other big names that we're clearly focused on, and for good reason, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a good week. Let's see here. So let's get into the charts. We've got SPY right up front. This is the 4-hour candle, so I wanted to call that out. The 4-hour, because it created this nice little pattern that is a little bit easier to see versus if you're trying to look at it on the daily. And this kind of rising wedge pattern is going to break one way or another. And typically, I think you'll see these break to the downside. That doesn't mean we're going to get massive selling, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got a pullback to this 482.72 level on SPY. And that's kind of what I'm calling out here. If we did get a bigger drawback, you could get all the way down to that 476.46, 476.50, call it. And that would be, pretty strong support, I would think, given how much resistance we had there before breaking out. That would be quite the drawdown, but, not crazy, I don't think. Sean, what do you see on this chart that I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, with the drawdown, it's kind of depending on earnings as well, isn't it? Because lots of bigger companies have the higher percentage of the SPY. Of course, if they all come in that negative, obviously that was sending the SPY tumbling, I would say. So at least that 476 level. But of course, then I would say they're probably not all going to, miss EPS earnings, etc. But yeah, I think I like a little kind of channel. I like it. I think. I don't know, really, it's generally trending up, isn't it? So it's not the end of the world. And you're kind of, is that the 20 moving average you've got there?
That's the 9. I meant to call that out. Okay. So thanks for asking. Yes.
It is quite tight,
what?
actually.
Did I update this? No, this is the 9. Yeah, that's the 9. Okay. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, either way, isn't it, at the end of the day? So you've got 5 of the big tech names kind of reporting. We're just going to see what happens. But overall, the trend is nice. Obviously, the trend is your friend at the end of the day.
Yeah, you got a little bit of a curl over on the RSI, right? Relative strength at the bottom of the chart there. And that 9 is holding, and I'm glad you pointed out, because if you look back in the chart, anytime candles kind of got underneath it and then respected it a little bit, they rolled over, right? So that's something to watch. If we got just below the 9 here, but you'd want to see it actually respect that and reject against it, and then you might see this continue to roll over, and that would coincide with breaking this rising wedge. So that's what I'm really watching for here to the downside. If that doesn't happen and we stay above that 9, I mean, it looks like more upside. Kay, what would you add here?
So I am taking a look at the weekly for SPY, and it just seems like, I mean, there was a little wick, but seems like a little bit of a gap up on the weekly if you don't consider the wick to be covering that. But in any case, it's really detached from the moving averages. It's just took a vertical, takeoff. On the weekly, the RSI is, I think, 71.43, so a little bit overbought. And I can see why that's the case. We have a put to call ratio of 2.69 on expiration February 2nd for SPY. So you have about 719,000 put options expiring versus only 267,000 call options. So
all right, well, there you have it. I mean, it's going to be another make or break kind of feeling this week, I think, heading into the week. And, again, a little bit of a pullback would be healthy here.
Yeah, and I think you'll probably see, I guess we are touching a lot of stocks that are reporting earnings this week, and I think you can see the sentiments because some of them are going to drive the market, especially SPY and QQQ.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of QQQ and weekly candles, that's what we got next. And these, again, flipping from the 4 hour to the weekly, there's a reason for this, right? It's just what we see in the charts. And on the weekly here, I've got arrows pointing to these large upper wicks. I think Sean, you referred to them as topping wicks, and that's because they tend to come at the top of these reversals, and notice here we've got pretty consistent pattern where you get those long upper wicks and then some selling follows, and it's not like it, again, this does not mean there's massive crash or selling like that. It's just a bit of a pullback might be in order, and we got one last week. And so if we get, February, a bit of selling, I think I heard the last 2 weeks of February are seasonally generally pretty tough. That would make some sense, and maybe we get a pullback towards 400 again for the Qs. Does that make sense to you, Sean?
It does, yeah. And I like the annotations you've drawn on the chart. I think they tell a story. Most definitely, just taking a breather, like you say, just a normal correction. Especially with this one on a weekly, it's a bit more of a longer perspective, of course. That goes back down to kind of middle of 2021. But yeah, I think coming back down to this moving average. But I mean, if you saw this on a 5 minute,
Right.
would you place a short, or would you just kind of leave it? So for me personally, I would probably just leave it, let it travel sideways for a bit, and then pull back to the moving average naturally. But yeah, it's an interesting perspective to have, to kind of imagine it if it was a different time frame. Bit of a strange perspective, perhaps, but I guess I'm quite a strange human being. But yeah, coming back down to that 400 level psychologically would be pretty good too, generally. But yeah, topping candles, I like what you've drawn.
I won't argue with that comment about the strange human being, but I will say I totally think that what you're talking about with the time frames, it applies. I mean, you should be able to look at any chart and not, regardless of the time frame, and be able to make decisions, right? And that's a really good point. Like, I'm calling out that there might be a chance that we reverse here, but there's not enough information to be like, oh yeah, this is absolutely a reversal point. We would want to see some selling begin next week to really think, okay, maybe there's a downside momentum play here. But even then, we're above this moving average, by the way, the 13, and there's a reason for that. So you've got 4, 4, and 5, right? As far as weeks go, every 3 months, and so the quarterly, there you go, you got 13 weeks. So it's just another little adjustment. Really, you could look at it with, like, I had the 9 on here. It's very similar, and the same kind of thought process. Once you see the rollover and a little bit of respect there, we could get some selling. But it's been respecting this moving average, and the Qs continue to power higher and make new highs. So yeah, I again, I'm bullish longer term, and this week will be massively impactful to the Qs.
Absolutely.
What else, Kay? What did we miss on the Qs?
Same stuff. 1.73 put to call, expiration 2-2. I think that just tells you that little, candle, little the wick on both sides. Its market is undecisive, and next week you'll get that decision which side it moves.
Okay, this is your wheelhouse, the big tech names, right? Like, this is if I'm going to anybody to talk about big tech, I'm going to you. And what do you think this week? Are you feeling optimistic, or do you feel like, I think you said you're a little bit,
Yeah. So the
cautious,
reason.
maybe?
Yeah, I'm very cautious. The reason is that there are a couple of things that are happening for big tech names like Apple, Amazon, Meta, and your what's the fourth one? I forget. Alphabet. I think Microsoft is in a much more. Microsoft and Amazon, I would say, are in a much better shape. I would say, from an earning standpoint and just the content they have behind it. AMD, and if you think about the semiconductor space, in the S&P 500, you have energy sector. The entire energy sector is 3% of the S&P 500.
Right.
NVIDIA by itself is over 3%. So semiconductor, and on top of it, AMD is making all-time highs. So I think when everything is making all-time high, you have extreme greed. I think that's when, I tend to especially just pause and see what's going on before jumping in and buying and having a FOMO. Because once you get a pullback of, let's say, 10%, like you get a correction of 10%, there you go. Now you're stuck at, at a higher price point. What do? You just wait until the price comes back there.
So you're saying maybe wait until after earnings and see what happens. And I think that's a perfect segue.
Yeah, exactly. Go for it.
I think it's a perfect segue to this chart we got, right?
There you
Fingers out here, Sean. Tesla last week. I'm gonna hand it over to you, sir, and break it down for us.
Yeah, so obviously the earnings double miss, of course. We've all seen it. We've all seen the reaction, of course, and you can see the reaction in the stock price. Big gap down on Thursday, as you would expect, and then a little bit of a flat day on Friday. Has showed signs of a little bit of recovery, but obviously you're not going to expect a big bounce back straight away. So what I can see here is a few things on the chart, of course, obviously a few yellow dots. We'll start with the bottom ones, which is the RSI. We are down at 17 on the RSI, which is a very low point. Now, of course, the RSI can stay down here for quite some time, but maybe not necessarily 17. You could go up to kind of 20, 25. But this could last for kind of up to 2 weeks, I would say. But generally, it's still generally a good time to buy, especially if you're buying long term. But the reason I'm kind of trepidatious about this is my favorite word at the moment. I'm not entirely sure if it's a full word, but you can see that 164 level, which is next in line. Actually, I probably should have started with the Fibonacci that I drew, which is the kind of yellow lines throughout the chart. And I've done a 40%, 50%, and a 60% Fibonacci. That's kind of how I draw them. A little bit different to other people, I guess, just to make it simpler for me to understand where those levels might be. And you can see, obviously, current stock price around that kind of 40% line, which is obviously 180. But I think once we break that, or if we break that, of course, if we get down to 164, that would be my kind of, okay, I'll think about buying. Or at least starting position from a trade point of view, of course, long-term position, just kind of DCAing as kind of the general strategy. But going out to that 164 would be kind of my initial thoughts of starting a swing trade for this one. And then you can see the blue highlighted section, which is the last one I want to talk about. Didn't actually know what price that was, but that's a gap fill all the way back from the beginning of 2023, which we didn't quite fill in May. You see that kind of low point with all those yellow dots. Didn't quite fill it. I'm not saying obviously all gap fills should be filled, but it's there. It's there to kind of be looked at. So that blue line, we're probably looking at around about 145-ish, 150. Actually, I've got it here on my chart now, which is, so 147. So that would be kind of my add again, should we say, for the same trade, and hopefully, get a little bit of a bounce, a little bit of a kind of resurrection for Tesla. I'm going to stop talking now. It's been a couple of minutes, I think, but that's kind of what I see on the chart. I didn't even touch volume profile, but I'll let you do that, Nate.
Oh, good, because that's where I was going. I like the volume profile alignment at 164. I'd be curious what options action looks like around these levels. I'm not sure, Kay, if you're pulling that up.
Yep.
But yeah, beautiful, because 164. Look at those touch points and good volume, and then also great volume right here where we got the support last week, and I have not bought in yet. I am really close though, like really close. So yeah, London's out there calling Tesla 160. I don't disagree. I do not disagree. So if you nibble here, I don't argue that either, because we could find, how Tesla is, you get sell-offs and people like myself are just waiting to buy in. And so you get a little bit of support. But yeah, I don't disagree. The demand comes in down there, the 160, 164 level. So I like to see that here. Kay, what would you add?
So I'm looking at it a little bit differently. If you actually draw a trend channel from the top of that, the high that you have there, and then you actually draw a trend channel. So the Tesla stock price is very close to that downtrend line, right? Downtrend channel, right? So I think that would be the first take on whether it can bounce off and stays in that trend channel, or does it break down? Yeah, I mean, if it breaks down, then what you're looking at, the 164, that's where majority of the action is happening. Last week or the week before, we talked about Tesla as well, and you asked me, hey, when do you actually start investing? So I start nibbling around the 200. I also nibble at 180. I will nibble more at 160. So for me, I will be buying at different levels, because you really cannot catch the bottom and you cannot always sell at the top. So that's the lesson we all have learned in different ways, and that's what I'm following. So I'm never going to wait for the absolute bottom. I will continue to add to my DCA to my position, and because once it starts ripping up, you will miss that boat, like we have missed in Tesla so many times.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Yeah. As I say, obviously you're right. Obviously, no one knows where the bottom is, but the best you can do is obviously do your research and kind of DCA to your kind of level.
Well, look when it hit 100, right? On the far left of this chart, it just ripped. I mean, it took no time to get back to 200, like a month, right? And then after retesting this 164, when it decided to take off, it wasted no time again all the way to 260. So,
I mean,
like,
you need just one comment from Elon Musk. Hey, I will be putting all my energy into AI in Tesla, and then next day Dan Ives will come on CNBC and he'll say, "Oh, I'm going to change my short-term position and I'm going to be buying Tesla." And there you go. Everybody gets on board.
nice. Yep. I'm with you. And looks like we got some shorts out in the audience making some money. So love to see everybody, anytime anybody's making money. Great to see the trades. So we got London taking this down to 160, thanks, and we'll see what happens. And this could be a dead cat bounce, or it could be where we find some buyers and another move higher. That would be holding a higher low, by the way. So just note that. All right, Sean, hand it back to you. Sorry about that. What's our next chart?
So the next chart is a bit of a similar sort of thing in terms of scaling into positions. So we mentioned it obviously through Tesla, they're kind of scaling in from different points of contact, supports, whatever you want to call it, on the way down. This one's a little bit of different. So you can see it's Rocket Lab for starters. I don't know if I actually said that on the daily chart, and we can see it's kind of hovering on this 50 moving average, which is the pink line that's kind of flowing through the chart, and it's the one that's got all the yellow dots on it as well. That I put all the yellow dots there to obviously see the respect it has towards that line. And my thoughts are basically, are we going to see that again in the coming days? Are we going to see that kind of respect? Are we going to see a little bit of a bounce? But also I wanted to add here, if we don't, and we break that kind of 50 moving average, we also have this trend line that's kind of flowing up as well. You can see it when it started at kind of middle of October last year. And so, yeah, a couple of points of not confluence, but 2 points of kind of contact. So what I would probably do, and what I probably will look to do in the next coming days, if not tomorrow, of course, is start a position here. And then if it comes down to this kind of trend line, I would add to that position, obviously bring down the average. And then my swing trade would then be kind of fully in motion. So I've scaled in and I'm basically just kind of sitting on my hands and wait for it to kind of go up and make money, of course. Or if it comes down and hits my stop loss, that's trading at the end of the day. So I've got here as well 2 red lines, and that's kind of 2 possible stop losses. So if you wanted to kind of take a high risk trade and go in it now, obviously you've got the higher stop loss of 460, which represents I think about 5%. I think off the top of my head, just looking at it, it must be about that. So yeah, and then obviously the one down below is representative of if you entered at the trend line, which is the white line obviously coming through the screen there. Which is a bit of a bigger stop loss, but I believe to kind of be a bit safer. Obviously, down below all of the volume profiles, and obviously the most recent low in December. And then just finally on this one, we've got a nice little bit of kind of stability with the RSI, which is nice to see. And my target would be 545, which you can see a big bit of volume coming in there. But that's it for me on Rocket Lab. What else do you guys see?
Okay, is this one on your radar?
No, what does this I don't even know this sticker. What is this? What do they do?
RKLB.
They launch rockets into space, essentially.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah. I was going to say you could probably guess that, but I mean, you never know these days with these names. But yeah, they're a rocket launching company.
I'm not into that space actually.
So not familiar with this one, Kay?
Nope.
I like the chart. I like the way this is building some momentum here. And if we do hold at this moving average that you mentioned, Sean, it would be a kind of increasing momentum, right? And that would definitely catch my interest at this point. So I think it's kind of like what we were saying before, a great spot to be watching and seeing how it reacts. And if we get a good reaction this week, then yeah, we could definitely see some more upside, because that would show some added support, higher lows, and then maybe targeting higher highs, which is, there's some room to run if they were getting to higher highs there.
What I would say is this stock is very high risk, so I probably should have started with that at the beginning. It is basically a penny stock. It's under that $5 mark, so there is a massive risk to this stock. So just be careful if you do decide to trade this, if you are out there.
And there's a buy rating from Wall Street on this one, but not many analysts cover this. Only like 7,
I doubt it.
9 analysts cover this. That's pretty much it.
So this could be a great trade is basically how it works, but there is risk. So you want to make sure you're managing your risk level, right? That's what you're saying. But any stock that's under $10 has the potential on based on news to really make a move. So I'm gonna add this one to my watch list. I have not had Rocket Lab there, anywhere
Yes.
noted.
There you go.
Got another one added. Good stuff. Thanks, John.
It's a good price point to trade. Actually, it's not a
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is
It is.
definitely interesting. And like I said, building some momentum here. All
Awesome.
right,
Yeah.
Sean. Where can we find
Yeah.
you?
So obviously you can follow me on X. I'm posting a little bit more now, charts and kind of daily insights around trading, the mentality behind it as well, and also obviously my fun kind of posts as well throughout throughout. Yeah, whatever. But then on YouTube, so something new on YouTube that I do now is I go live every Friday before the market close. Now I understand you guys over there obviously very busy at these times, 5 p.m., 2 p.m. I think it is respectively. And but yeah, I mean it's more for kind of post watching. So go ahead and check that out. Or obviously join me on the live stream live. Obviously drop a comment and say hi. But that's it for me. I'll hand you over to Nate.
I love it, man. I didn't know you were doing the live stream on Fridays. I'll check that out because, like you said, always
Yeah.
busy, but great to have something to listen and watch. Because I'm never
Yeah.
interested in what I'm doing.
definitely. At least on the sidelines, you can just keep it on and listen what Sean is saying.
I'm digging it. All right, good stuff. Thanks for the charts and the info this week. And Rocket Lab, that's a new one. Really curious to see what happens with Tesla there. All right, so speaking of stocks under $10, I've got SoFi up this week, and there's a whole bunch of lines on here. It looks super messy, but bear with me because they all point to one spot. That's where that big orange, yellowish arrow is pointing. And that kind of caught me by surprise. So you would think by looking at this that this chart that all these lines you may start on the right hand side and draw spreading out to the left, but in fact they're all converging. So we've got the 20-day moving average, the 50-day moving average, and then I've got anchored VWAP points from prior earnings and prior highs as well as the recent low, and all of them converge to basically 825, call it. I mean, there's a range in there, but 825 is pretty close, and I've got 811 as resistance with a bit of a volume shelf kicking out right there. So I thought that was pretty interesting to note. Huge resistance at SoFi here at this level. And so if we do get a pop on earnings, I would like to see it get above all of these anchored VWAPs from all these different points in time. That's really what I want to note. RSI is kind of weak, so there's going to take quite a bit to get above that level. Otherwise, I think we reject again, and 740 be what I'd be testing. And if it doesn't hold up, the lows are back near 650. What do you guys think about this one? Kay, you like SoFi for the long term, right?
Yeah, I like for the long term. And if you add the 200-day moving average, it did get rejected the last 2 trading days. So that has become like a resistance at least. And I think we probably are waiting for the earnings report. And I guess that will give us the signal whether, we'll see a upside or a downside on this one. But I do feel that with the expectations of being, positive EPS, we could see a big pop on Monday on SoFi.
And they're before the market open, right? Which is super
8 o'clock the report earnings. Yeah, I think the report earnings 7:30 and 8 o'clock is the conference call. So you're getting right into the market open with the commentary almost being completed, and analysts will be analyzing the commentary, and so Monday is going to be a very, very busy day, especially for SoFi and SoFi investors.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the important thing for this is if it pops, it needs to hold the momentum, because we've seen it a few times, especially in the last kind of 24 months or so. It pops up on earnings and it loses it within a few days. So you mentioned this point here of all this kind of confidence coming around this kind of 11 level-ish. The important thing is to kind of hold that moving forward, especially if you're investing like Kay for the long term. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
And I just want to add one more thing. So for anyone that is listening or going to watch this one, if you have like options, open call options on SoFi, and market opens and you are in green, don't try to hold off. Try to get the profits out, because otherwise you could see that during the day as
analysts finish the analysis and they start to digest the information, then you could see a big sell off if you get a major pop right at the earnings at the market open.
Yeah, and I didn't note implied in volatility here, but you expect some
Oh
of
my
that
god,
to come off,
you want
right?
to hear it on 2 implied vol is 179%.
Yeah, there you go. So you've got, a huge what am I trying to say? Decompression there, potentially, right? Right after, because everybody's waiting on earnings, you get the information, volatility comes off. So I agree. Take profits early if you'd like to leave runners. If you're in options, I'm always for leaving a runner or two, but by and large, you don't want to leave profits on the table for them to be snatched out. You can just look at this chart and see how quickly things can reverse. So good points there, guys. Appreciate that very much. I just thought it was really interesting to see all of these lines come to basically a single point here and just creating like a massive ceiling. So
It's going to be a big bang, right?
Yeah, breakthrough could be massive too. So we'll see how it goes. Got earnings Monday. Won't have to wait too long. And then I got ExxonMobil on the other end of the week, right? Closing out the week. So I'll let you guys cover all the big names in the middle. But ExxonMobil, I really have been watching energy. I'm actually trading Occidental and Venom, VNOM, which is Viper Energy, and doing well in both of those trades. But I noticed here the anchored VWAP again providing some resistance. And actually, I've repopped that to last earnings and posted that this morning as well. And it's similar, line comes in similar spot. And we're actually breaking above that anchored VWAP line most recently. So the point here being, if we can get above this volume weighted average price on earnings or ahead of earnings and then hold it, it could be a signal to, take an entry for a long and more upside in the energy sector. And, ExxonMobil leads the space, obviously, like huge weighting in XLE. K, this is another one. I feel like I'm stealing K's tickers.
No, go for it. Go for
What are
it.
your thoughts on ExxonMobil, K?
I think we did see a lot of consolidation for 4 days of trading around the 95 level, and I think that was the springboard for the stock to break through the 99, which was our initial support level, and it break through, and then you went to 95. I am actually in the trade for Exxon, Oxy, and SLB. If you remember SLB from long time back, I'm still in that trade.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think from ExxonMobil, I think energy has been down for a while now. So I think with the prices coming up and the stock getting a little bit of a boost with earnings coming up, most likely they're going to report good earnings, right? You have Chevron as well reporting the same day. So I think you might start seeing energy coming back, starting next week. I mean, the following week.
Yeah, I like it. These companies are printing money with oil at the levels that it's at. If it can sustain here. What do you think, Sean? Any thoughts on ExxonMobil?
No, not really. I mean, we spoke about it before a couple of months ago with the kind of anticipation of it breaking that kind of trend, but you can kind of see it come back up and reclaim that. It'd be nice to see if maybe next week, Kay, you could bring up ExxonMobil, especially after the earnings, and see what the reaction is, just to kind of see that progression in the chart. That'd be great to see. But yeah, I like the levels that you've got here, and I specifically like 104. You can see that kind of breakout trade opportunity there. My eyes are kind of turning into hearts, that kind of emoji. But yeah, no, nice chart. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight this area here. If you can see my arrow, I think is right around where you called. I think we're going to go short ExxonMobil, and you were spot on. It's either there or it was one of these two wicks, but you nailed it. And
yeah,
sold off,
Sean nailed ExxonMobil, and that was, I think, before we went on the holiday.
Okay, so it was back here.
Yeah. Sean nailed it. We had the 99 as the support level. We had the trend channel. It broke through the trend. I said, hopefully we'll be able to support the 99. It broke through that. So, Sean does a very good job in reading.
You gotta pay attention. You gotta pay attention to what the man is saying. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing some more earnings, not just in big tech, but also in energy. Just want to call out ExxonMobil this week. And we are getting some requests out there. Neo, Baba, and Enphase, all names we've covered. So if you guys have any thoughts, we'll get to that towards the end of this this podcast here. And yeah, those are good and interesting names. For me, the names out of China are super risky right now, but at the same time, that might be a good point for an opportunity to get in. So interesting stuff there. If you want to hear more from me, I am on X often trying to share my trade ideas and thoughts on the markets. So be sure to give me a follow at Trader Nate here. Also writing for my own newsletter at Traders Education on Substack, but also for Wolf at Wolf Financial every Sunday. Just posted another edition this week and actually covered some anchored VWAP. I believe that was this week. So doing a lot of writing and enjoying it. So be sure to check it all out. And I'm going to hand it over to Kay next because he's got Apple, and I am super curious about Apple this week. What are your thoughts, Kay?
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Yeah, so I got Apple and Amazon this week. They both report earnings on Thursday. Apple, as we know, I'm not sure. Microsoft is also, I think, at the same level. I mean, they're neck to neck in the market cap standpoint. So I don't have the latest one who is larger, but they both report earnings Tuesday and Thursday, respectively, Microsoft and Apple. So Apple is at a very, interesting place. And the reason Apple is the largest holding in my portfolio. So of course, I don't want Apple to go down or crash or, burn like many others, because this is also in pretty much every ETF for mutual funds, for institutional investors, pretty much the largest holding in most people's portfolio, whether you have it directly or indirectly. So interestingly, the consensus price target on Apple, if you do a consensus, it's about $200 or so. And we are only 3.5% or closer to 4%, away from that all-time high. So the stock has been pretty much, trending at that level for a while now. Now, generally, the implied move is about $8 or so. So you could pretty much hit the all-time high of $200 in no time post earnings. So that is generally the setup that we see. Now, you may have not seen this news if you don't follow Apple closely, but there are two main, back issues that are happening with Apple. And that is throwing water on this whole situation. So one is that Apple is now going to allow developers to use additional payment methods. That could impact their potential revenue from services, which is that what they charge 30%, and I think now they decided to decrease that to 27%. I forget the split. I think it's 12% for small developers and 27% for the large developers. That's the first issue, which most people probably would know. The second would actually impact Google, because seems like that Google is getting pressure of getting into a lawsuit with antitrust that how Google pays Apple about $15 billion a year to use Google as the default search engine.
Couple billion,
yeah. So they are getting into this lawsuit, or a lawsuit that is coming up, is that this is killing competition, and Google should not be paying money to other big tech so that the competition remains as is. Now, if that lawsuit happens, you would see some kind of an impact on both Google and Apple, because again, that's a revenue that Apple gets from Google. That's a pretty decent chunk of money for the year. And then, of course, looking at your 4 straight quarters of revenue decline, you always have Apple bears that there is no new innovation. You got a Vision Pro. You got some negative news that Netflix and YouTube and those apps are not coming on that. So there's just a lot of news around Apple, and Apple is one of the most watched tickers across the board. I mean, I wouldn't be touching Apple at this level. First of all, even if I'm trading, I would just let the earnings play out and see how it plays out. And also, it's pretty detached from all the moving averages. You see the 200. We did see a 200 bounce on the 200 moving average. So I like that level of 180, but I think it's too extended at this point. So the upside potential and a downside risk. So downside risk overweighs the upside potential for me for Apple. So I would not be getting involved in this stock or at the trade until the earnings settles and we see a guidance. Because if they give a weak guidance or a lukewarm guidance, you could see S&P 500 going down in no time.
No doubt. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I think the last three. I think at least the last three earnings reports from Apple have been quite underwhelming. The numbers you've reflected that obviously in your fifth point there. So I think you're right. I'm going to be sitting on my hands here, and I don't really trade Apple generally. But I'm looking forward to the earnings report and see if they can actually spring a surprise, something like you say, like a good guidance going ahead. The chart for me, again, like you say, was a bit extended. I do like the fact it's above all moving averages. and obviously above that kind of volume profile as well. So I think that's bullish, and obviously that's kind of tied in with the sparring QQQ we talked about earlier. But yeah, we'll wait for the earnings report on Thursday.
So interestingly enough, this might be one of the spots where I would take a trade ahead of earnings. And I like Apple long term. It's an investment. Obviously it drives the markets, like you said, Kay, spot on there. And I don't trade it too often in the near term. But what I'm hearing is a lot of negative sentiment out there, and a lot of like, hey, we're at all these crazy, highs again. And if you look at the chart, it rolled over a little bit last week. So um, that being said, this 192 level, if it holds up, right, and then we reverse course and take off above 200. I mean, if that happens on some catalyst, if there's some news that is, super bullish and gets going, that's a cup and handle that's going to break basically. And the upside could be pretty large. So I think it's high risk reward because we are at these high levels. Like this is not a slam dunk A+ setup, but I bet you could get in at fairly decent option prices at the 200, 202 kind of level and see how it plays out. Again, high risk, so I wouldn't put a ton of capital towards that. But just a thought, looking at the chart, contrarian possibly.
No, I totally understand why you are saying that. So would you be like willing to get into a trade between Monday and Wednesday, or do
Yeah.
you? Okay,
Yeah, like if it holds 192 and is just sitting there flat on Monday, I think that would be a very interesting.
good signal for you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Like even if it dipped a little bit, recovered and got back above 192, it would look like, a little, there's some buyers there and maybe get in with them and see what happens. But
I mean,
yeah,
you can
high
do
risk.
iron condor on this one.
Oh, that's very interesting. So explain that a little bit, Kay.
I mean, I haven't thought about I just, when you said you want to trade it, I'm like, you can do probably iron condor. So you basically, you want the stock price to be in that range. If it goes beyond that range, because you're playing both on the call side and the put side, right? So your iron condor, so you want the stock to trade in that range, whatever, you choose between buying, selling on the put side, buying, selling on the call side, whatever range you're putting. If your stock is within that range, that's when you make the money. But if the stock goes on either direction beyond that, then the chances of you will be start to lose money. So I mean, iron condor could be one. I mean, I'll take a look into the iron condor, see what would be a good setup for iron condor. I generally don't play that because I've always lost on iron condors. That is not, so I'm not a good one on iron condor. But yeah, that could be one possibility if you
Yeah,
wanted.
you can definitely take advantage of some trading strategies with options to play like what you're saying, just a movement sideways, right? And then I don't usually trade the iron condor, but what I can tell you is that you can adjust it as you go, right? So if you do get a break one way or another, you can take positions on and off within these option strategies, and it allows you to take advantage. Too much detail to get into on our hour-long discussion here today, but a great topic to dive into. So maybe we get into that on a future podcast for sure.
Yep.
Different option strategies, always interesting. We'll see what happens, guys. What else you got here on Apple, or should we keep it rolling, Kay?
Yeah, let's keep it rolling. I think the next one is Amazon.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit more bullish on Amazon as opposed to Apple. And the reason is, first, they are not at their all-time high. They are moving towards their March 2022 high, which is their 8% away. So that's a good sign. And we have really seen in the recent couple months, I would say, I think they really took off after the July of last year. And generally the implied move is about $11 or so plus minus, so you can take that into account. And interestingly, unlike Apple, Amazon today has no sell rating by any analyst, so there's a very strong buy, and a lot of analysts are actually loading up on Amazon from the last couple of months now. So that is a very interesting setup. I think everybody pretty much is waiting for Andrew Jassy to report earnings. All eyes would be on AWS, because last quarter, I think the previous quarter and the previous quarter, I think Azure overperformed or performed better than AWS. So there was a lot of focus over there. We will also see if they have any AI related news, because they did mention AI in their earnings report last time. So we'll see if they play that AI game along with the AWS, and I think that is going to be the catalyst that could push the stock beyond above the March 22, and then we will have those double top over there that you see. I think that was around the July and October. Yeah, July October 2022. So those will be very interesting to see how, if they can break that and create an all-time high for this year.
There's some nice targets to aim at.
Yeah.
Is this a trade you get in on here, Sean?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of mirrors a little bit about maybe not the entry point, but from the Google trade I've just played, just playing up these kind of big stocks as they're trending higher, as the SPY QQQ is trending higher, just to kind of ride that wave of that stock until something really triggers in a negative fashion, of course, news, or even just a big kind of indicator break, perhaps. But yeah, interestingly, I just had a look at my chart and all-time highs of 187, I believe. Is that right? Well, it must be because I'm looking at the chart. 187, that's actually 17% away. So that's not a bad trade if you were trying to play towards the all-time highs. And then obviously, if you did get a good earnings report, of course, that would only accelerate Amazon's growth going into the following months. So there's food for thought there. And of course, if it's negative, then obviously you'll be triggered out. So a little bit of risk behind it. But yeah, this is one that I like, a stock that I like.
And I just forgot to just mention one thing. The put to call is 0.59. You don't see that kind of put to call on stocks like these. Like SoFi, yes. Retail stocks, yes. But Amazon, that kind
usually.
of.
Wow.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Good stuff as always, Kay. Amazon, yeah, this has been interesting, and I feel like similar to Google, like taking a back seat to Meta, Microsoft, some of the other Nvidia, obviously, and Tesla. So yeah, appreciate you bringing this one forward. Where else can we find you?
Well, I am always daily available on X. I generally post content there as well. So earning reports and thoughts about the trades and stuff like that you can catch there. And I do have a YouTube channel. You can track me over there as well. I do post videos on a regular basis. Also, we cover earnings. And I do write on Substack as well. So you can catch me there as well.
Love it.
If you guys haven't seen how Kay obviously breaks down the earnings reports, that they are really good. They're really easy to read and kind of get the information nice and easily. But yeah, go ahead and give them a follow because I like to look at them at least.
Yeah, totally agree. Kay does an amazing job. You guys, we got some requests, and I was curious if either of you had any initial comments, and I'll pull up charts here on either Neo, Sean, hint, Baba, or Enphase.
Actually, you can take a look at Neo.
Yeah, and Enphase, that's another one that I know, Sean, you've covered. Do you have any initial thoughts, or are you currently trading any of these names?
So Enphase, I have a position in INRG, which is one of our stock picks for the year. So they're one of the biggest holders of that. So technically, yes, I suppose. But I'm not actively trading the stock as it is. Just because if you have a look at the chart, I mean, you'll probably say in a minute, Nate, the daily does not look great at all. And I think this is all dependent on basically kind of CPI and kind of inflation rates, etc., and when we're going to cut. It's all basically dependent on that. Now, obviously, we do have earnings, I think, on February the 6th, I think, off the top of my head. I could be wrong. Thereabouts. So that would be interesting to see as well, because the last 3 or 4 earnings reports have been absolutely dire. So it'd be nice to see some better guidance at least from a company like that, and obviously Solar Edge, etc., First Solar, that kind of whole industry. But yeah, no, that's kind of my initial thoughts on Enphase.
Real quick addition on Enphase, and we'll get to the other names here. Interesting. I agree with you. The daily candles on the surface don't look great. They've rolled over and trending down back below the 50-day moving average. But if you put an anchor VWAP from the last earnings, it has bounced off of it. So the big bounce it had in December bounced near this line, and then now we're again settling right on that same level. So right here at 104, 105 is some support. And if it bounces again, I mean, it could run all the way to 125 before hitting a really tough volume shelf there. So I think that's interesting because the downtrend is clear, right? You need to break that. But there is this anchored VWAP support below. So something to watch. I would basically want to see 194 hold. If that broke, then kind of look out below. So that's interesting. What should we go to next, Neo or Baba?
I did Baba first.
Baba, okay.
Yeah.
So on Baba, it's a. I mean, for me, it just looks a very ugly chart because it's been like on a downtrend.
It's up, down, all the time, that
What
chart, I
is
swear.
interesting, and because I don't follow Baba very closely, so I really don't have much. But the volume was pretty low back in September. I think once the volume fell in October, late October, it remained pretty flat around the 8 to 11 million until November, and then the volume has really picked up on the stock. So you see a lot more trading happening. So it's now up to 31 million. That's the average volume that is being traded. So that is a very interesting, unless you know what's going on because you are probably more familiar with the Chinese market, Sean.
So on, I think it was Wednesday, that volume that you saw on a Tuesday or something like that. I think China pumped in some money into their market, so that helped that. And also, I believe that one of the bigger owners, the shareholders, bought loads more shares of the stock as well. And I think it was about 200 million. I think, top of my head, it could be thereabouts. Probably should have brought up the article before I started talking about that. But yeah, that's the kind of reaction, kind of people buying. Kind of, I guess it triggers people to think, oh, actually, if these guys are buying, maybe I'll take a look into this stock, etc., etc. But yeah, that's the kind of news points that I brought up there.
So you're absolutely right. The volume doubled basically on that news. What were you
Do you guys own Baba? Like, do you trade Baba often, or do you have long-term portfolio? No. Okay.
No, I don't personally.
I do not. I just think it's a really high risk. I do like the trading opportunities because when it gets moving, it gets moving. But you can, zoom out on that chart and look at all the way back to summer of last year in July. We had a number of names start selling off through August and September, even through October. But then they caught a bid, right? And there's just a clear channel Baba's been in, and we're right at the top of that channel yet again. And 75 is a pretty strong volume shelf to have to break through, and it curled over. So I think it's probably heading back lower, and I would guess that 65 is in order before we see 80 or 85. But that's just following the trend, and it is below, again, resisting at the 50-day moving average. So a lot of downside pressure, I would say, for Baba right now. And then we got Neo, and I know Neo's been getting beat up and down near 6. And what do you think, Sean? We got to get your opinion on this one.
Yeah, so I posted a bit of a plug here, but I posted a slightly more in-depth video on Monday and kind of possibilities around Neo, especially in the shorter term. So go ahead and check that one out. But I think really my kind of whole thesis was kind of holding 6, because if we don't hold 6, I actually see 430. Or thereabouts, which is a massive drop. It's another 30% drop. In which case I might actually play a short on that, but potentially, of course. But I think obviously getting to that $7 level and kind of testing it, kind of breaking through there, which we did kind of try and start a move in middle parts of the week, obviously with the Chinese news, etc. But all the moving averages are above, all the volume is above. It's going to be very, very tricky to get above that $7 level, especially straight away. Maybe a few tests at that $7 level, but that's kind of what I see. 7 is the spot.
I like it. Would you add anything, Kay?
I'm just crying from my long-term portfolio. That's all. Like, why did I enter in this stock?
We all have those stocks, don't we? Come on.
Oh, that's so funny. And the difference is we just don't usually talk about it, but we make Kay talk about it here because we keep bringing them up. I will say this, Kay. There's been double bounce here, maybe a double bottom off of the lows. So maybe we see some upside, but it has been tough going for Neos. So we'll see how it happens. I'm sorry for the long-term portfolio pain, though. Good stuff. Guys, definitely great stuff this week. If you missed it earlier in the show, check out our comments on Amazon and ExxonMobil for sure. I know there's some comments out there from Maverick about swing trading. I think those comments will help you out. And okay, let's get one more in here before we wrap up. Upstart, because Upstart's super interesting, and I have levels drawn. I will jump to that really quick. We had a nice push that started to look positive. At the basically a week ago, right? And then we got into last week, and it just rejected at 38.34, and that was the top of a mini gap, mini gap that had formed back in the start of the year. So getting that gap filled seems to have kind of proven to be the ceiling there for Upstart currently at that 38, call it 30 level. It retested it again and then sold off. So now below another key level I've got at 33.86. The 50-day moving average is also above Upstart. And real quickly, I'll draw in anchored VWAP, and yeah, it's below its anchored VWAP now as well, which after it tested that and on January 10th, it sold off a bit. So I think we're going to see downside in Upstart before we get upside, and probably retest 27 is the level where some more support comes in. But that being said, if this market gets rolling, Upstart can definitely turn around. And when it does, it turns quickly. And it's sitting right on a volume shelf here at about 32.50. So high risk, high reward in Upstart. But my guess would be we're going to see a move a little bit lower here first. Do you guys trade Upstart? That's a crazy, that one moves.
I did a few weeks ago, and I think we spoke about it on here. And it didn't go so well. I basically got triggered out after a couple of days, which is fair enough. So I kind of do punch down and straight back up. That kind of annoying stop out, which you've both obviously experienced. But yeah, if looking at the chart, I think the only hope is the volume profile on the 200 moving average. Everything else is above it, and it's rejecting heavily. But you just never know. Like you say, if the stock market moves up, then stocks will follow.
Yeah. Good call. Good call. We got SoFi on Monday. That might impact some of the movement in Upstart as well. We talked about that earlier in the show. So yeah, be sure to subscribe to the Trading Triangle. Smash the like button. We appreciate the support week in and week out. I think with big earnings this week, there's some opportunity to make some money, but definitely give it a bit to time to play out and be cautious. I think optimistically cautious is how I would approach the week. But what do you think, Kay? How are you heading into the week?
Especially, I think a lot of trades that were open before, especially playing out this week. So I'll be watching those. I'm actually not planning to enter any trade unless something really pops up. I know somebody asked about NVIDIA. I mean, NVIDIA is not something you would want to trade, especially when it's making all-time highs. So it will be more of a FOMO if there's a pullback. So yeah, mostly watching the big earnings and letting my current trades either play out and close out with profit loss, whatever be the case, but not entering into any trades. And of course, nibbling on Tesla as it finds its level at 180, 160, whatever it is.
Nice. And Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I think just a little bit of a kind of mentality side of things. So obviously earnings is always quite exciting. So people tend to get a bit excited and kind of put in money. So the puts, the calls, obviously just kind of normal share trading as well. Just take a step back, let the earnings happen, kind of, think about what happened within that earnings report, for example, and kind of trade off of that if you really must. And if you are kind of gambling, if you are out there, that kind of type, I am that kind of type as well sometimes. Just, watch your size, just protect your account, because at the end of the day, you want to keep trading. In order to keep trading, you need to protect your account. So just be careful out there and obviously enjoy it. Why not? That's why we're here, to enjoy the market. So yeah. Enjoy
and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
That's right. Yeah. And keep the questions coming in. Shout out to the Dividend Dog and Ty. We see you guys out there giving love to the channel and to the live stream. Appreciate that. And the questions coming in from Maverick and really Cash the Profit. All of you guys, appreciate it. Keep it coming. We will be doing this every Sunday at 2 Eastern. So continue to tune in. Send us your questions. Follow us on X and have yourself a great trading week ahead. Thanks, everybody.